All right, so today we're diving into something pretty big, huh? Death and aging.
Yeah, some seriously big questions.
You shared some excerpts from a book that, well, it really digs deep, like from how our cells work to, the whole evolution thing.
It's a wild ride for sure.
It makes you think about, well, everything, really. Like, what does it even mean to die? Why do we age? Why aren't we, living forever?
And the book, it starts off with this really cool analogy, comparing a cell, like one of our cells, to a city.
Yeah, that one grabbed me too. It's like, whoa, our cells are like mini cities, bustling, working, keeping everything going.
Exactly. And they even, well, kind of die like cities too, when things break down.
That's what I found so interesting. It uses that city idea to show what happens when, we age.
Right, like all that buildup of, well, cellular waste. It's like trash piling up in the streets, right?
Totally. Or how cells, they kind of talk to each other, but as we age, it's like those communication lines get jammed.
Like a massive traffic jam, everything slows down.
Okay, so that's aging, like way down deep. But death? I mean, we all know what death is, but the book, it says it's not so simple.
Absolutely not. It's way more nuanced than we think.
What?
One example it uses, organ donation.
Oh, right.
Makes you think, death might not be the total end. Organs can keep living in someone else. So where does one life end and the other begin?
Whoa, yeah. Makes you wonder what being alive really means, if parts of us, can keep going.
Right. And the book also talks about how we legally define death and how that has like real consequences. It uses that example of, that girl.
The one who was, declared dead in one state but not another?
Yeah, exactly. It's like death is this universal thing, but it can be so subjective.
It's definitely not just an on-off switch. So, okay, death is complicated. But what about aging itself? Why? Like, evolutionarily, why?
Well, you'd think living longer means more chances to pass on your genes, right? So
Well,
why not live forever?
That's what I'm saying.
There's this idea, kind of common, that death, it makes room for new generations. But the book says, nope, not really. It talks about these evolutionary cheaters.
Cheaters.
Yeah, like imagine mutation. It lets you live longer, have more kids. It's going to spread, even if it's bad for the whole species in the long run.
So evolution is kind of selfish.
In a way, yeah. It's all about individual success, not the group.
Huh. But still, wouldn't those cheater genes lead to, everyone living longer eventually?
This is where it gets really interesting. The book talks about these two guys, Haldane and Fisher, geneticists. They figured out that genes, even bad ones, can stick around.
Even if they're bad.
Yeah, see, if a gene helps you early on, like survive, have kids, it doesn't matter if it causes problems later.
Oh, so like a time bomb.
Exactly. Like Huntington's disease.
Yeah.
The book uses that example. Often symptoms don't show up till after you've had kids, so the gene gets passed on, even with the risk.
Wow. Okay, that's kind of creepy. It's like our genes are playing this long game, but we're the ones who might suffer later.
Right. And this all leads to, well, some pretty fascinating theories about why we age. Like the mutation accumulation theory.
Which is?
Basically, aging is all those tiny genetic mistakes adding up, like wear and tear on our cells.
Oh, I get it. Like a car breaking down the more miles it has?
Exactly. Then there's this other theory. It's a mouthful, antagonistic pleiotropy, but the idea is simpler than it sounds.
Hit me with it.
So some genes, they're good early on, but bad later, like a trade-off. Like genes that make you grow super fast as a kid, great for survival, but maybe you get cancer later.
So evolution is like, hey, live fast, have babies, and deal with the consequences later.
Exactly. And then there's the disposable soma hypothesis.
Disposable what now?
Soma. It basically means our bodies, they're just temporary vehicles for our genes. It's all about resources. Put energy into growing, having kids, even if you neglect repairs later on.
So, like choosing a flashy sports car. Fun to drive, but breaks down all the time. Versus a boring but reliable sedan.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of trade-offs, the book mentions this study. British aristocrats. Women with fewer kids lived longer. It's just one study, but it makes you think.
Yeah, like maybe having lots of kids takes a toll biologically.
Yeah.
Especially for women. Which, that brings us to something that's always bugged me. Menopause. Evolutionarily, it makes no sense.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Right. Most animals, they reproduce till they're practically on death's door.
Right.
But not us.
Right. So why would we evolve to, stop having kids so early?
Well, the book dives into that. A whole bunch of theories trying to explain it. It's a puzzle, but it might tell us something about how we evolved, how we aged, the whole thing. It's a real puzzle, yeah. But before we get to solving it, think about this. We've been talking about, our own aging and death, right? but life itself.
Huh.
It's been going on for billions of years, nonstop.
It's kind of a mind-blowing thought, isn't it? Like we're just these little blips, but life, the whole thing, it just keeps chugging along.
Exactly. It really puts things into perspective. The book, it points this out. Every creature alive today, I mean everything, even bacteria, whales, all of us, we're descended from that first cell way back when. Billions of years.
Yeah.
We're all part of this chain, this unbroken line, all connected by, well, our genes.
So like we're carrying a little piece of ancient history inside us.
In a way, yeah. It's amazing. But okay, if our bodies are like temporary, like that disposable soma idea, what's actually being passed on?
Good question. What is it?
Our genes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Think of them as like the blueprints for life, the instructions to build, everything. And even though our bodies, they wear out, die, our genes, they can keep going, copying themselves, getting passed down. It's like a kind of immortality, at least for the information they carry.
It's like our genes are the real legacy, huh? Something that outlasts us.
I like that, yeah. And the book, it explains how this all works, even down to the cell level. It talks about two types of cells. Somatic cells, that's most of our body, and germline cells. Those are the ones that make sperm and eggs, the ones that carry our genes. And there's this barrier, the Weismann barrier. It separates the two, keeps them from mixing up.
So what that means, if I work out and get huge muscles, my kids won't inherit them.
Nope. No rip babies, sorry. That old idea that stuff you do in your life changes your genes, it's not true. The Weismann barrier, it keeps things separate. It's all about natural selection, those genes you're born with. And it means our bodies are, well, kind of like vehicles. Important for passing on those genes, but once that's done, the book says they're dispensable.
Huh. Kind of makes you feel less important, huh? But also, super cool how it all works. We've talked a lot about humans, but what about other animals? I mean, some live for like a day, others for hundreds of years. What's up with that?
Right. Lifespans all over the place. Mayflies, a few hours. Tortoises, centuries. Scientists have been trying to figure that out for ages.
Right.
The book says there's still a lot we don't know. But by studying all these different lifespans, we can start to piece things together. What makes some creatures live so long, others not so much.
So, by learning from them, we might figure out how to make humans live longer, too.
Maybe, yeah. That's part of the excitement. But okay, let's jump into the animal kingdom a bit. What can we learn from, creatures with lifespans way different than ours?
Let's do it.
One thing that's pretty clear is that smaller animals, they tend to have shorter lives. Not always, but often.
Makes sense to me. They're probably more likely to get eaten, right? So they got to have babies fast, pass on those genes before, well, something gets them.
Exactly. Live fast, die young.
Yeah.
Now, the opposite end, big animals, whales, elephants, they're not getting eaten so easily. They can afford to live longer, take their time, raise their young carefully.
So size matters. What about where they live? Does a tough environment make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. Tough environment, you got to be tough to survive. And some animals, they have amazing adaptations to live long lives, like the tardigrade. It's microscopic, but it can handle insane stuff. Extreme temperatures, radiation, even space. They basically shut down, go into this suspended animation, like pausing life until things get better.
Tardigrades, like little tiny superheroes. At least they need those superpowers to survive all that. Anything else that affects lifespan?
Well, metabolism's a big one. Slower metabolism, longer life, generally speaking. It's like their bodies are running on a lower setting, less wear and tear.
So like a hummingbird zipping around, wings going a mile a minute. It's burning through energy so fast it lives a shorter life.
You got it. Maybe the key to a long life is just, chill out a bit.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's genetics. We've talked about genes and aging, but are there specific genes for a long life?
That's what I want to know.
Scientists are working on that, and they've found some genes that seemed connected to longevity. But it's complicated. It's not like one single gene controls everything. It's more like a whole bunch of genes working together, plus the environment, all mixed up.
Sounds like a giant puzzle. But hey, if we figure out those long life genes in other animals, could we, use that to help humans live longer?
Some people think so, yeah. That's the hope. Figure out how they do it. Maybe we can do it too.
That's pretty wild. But I gotta ask, is that a good thing? Do we want to live longer? What would it do to, society, the planet?
Big questions, for sure. And the book, it brings up some of those challenges, like what if only rich people can afford to live longer?
Oh, man, that's a whole other level of inequality.
Yeah, right. And what about the environment? More people living longer, that's got to put a strain on things. We got to figure out how to, take care of everyone and take care of the planet at the same time.
That's a tough one. But it's not just practical stuff, right? Like, what would it mean for us as humans if we lived for hundreds of years?
Yeah, that's the big question. Would we still be,
Yeah.
us? Would we value the same things? Would life have the same meaning?
It's almost like we'd have to redefine what being human even means. Wow, this deep dive, it's really got me thinking. We started with cells, and now, well, we're talking about the future of humanity.
That's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has, and I feel like I've learned a ton, not just about, the science, but about what it all means, why we're here, what matters.
I think that's the key takeaway. Aging, death, it's not just biology. It's connected to everything, our values, our hopes, the whole shebang. And if we're going to try to live longer, we got to have these big conversations. What kind of future do we want? What's it all for?
Well said. Huge thanks to you for, well, taking us on this wild ride. It's been amazing. Okay, so we've gone from tiny cells to like giant tortoises, but now let's talk about something kind of crazy. What if we could actually make humans live longer?
Yeah, it's a wild thought, right? Imagine living for 150 years or 200, even longer. Kind of makes you rethink, well, everything. What does it even mean to be human if we live that long?
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine. Would people have like 5 different careers? Would families be totally different? And what about the Earth? Could it even handle that many people living for so long?
So many questions, right? And the book, it talks about some of the potential problems, like what if only rich people can get access to, whatever makes us live longer?
Oh, man, that would be awful. Like the rich get to live forever and everyone else doesn't. Talk about inequality.
Exactly. And think about the environment. More people living longer, that's got to put a strain on resources, the whole planet. We'd have to figure out how to, well, keep everyone alive and keep the planet healthy at the same time.
Not an easy task.
No.
But it's not just practical stuff, is it? It's like, would we even be the same? If we live for centuries, would we still care about the same things?
That's the deep question, isn't it? Would life have the same meaning? Would we still value youth or taking risks? It's almost like we'd have to come up with a whole new definition of what it means to be human.
Totally. It wouldn't just be about living longer. It'd be about, like, figuring out what to do with all that extra time.
Yeah.
What would make a good, meaningful life.
Wow. This deep dive, it's really taken us on a trip from those tiny cells to, well, the future of humanity.
It's been quite the journey, hasn't it?
It really has. And I feel like, well, we've learned a lot, not just facts, but something deeper, what it means to be alive, the whole big picture.
I think that's the point. Aging, death, it's not just science. It's part of everything, our values, our hopes, everything. And if we're going to try to change it, well, we need to really think about what kind of future we want.
I agree. Huge thanks to you for being our guide on this wild ride. It's been fascinating. And to all of you listening, thanks for coming along with us. We hope this deep dive has given you, well, something to think about life, death, and everything.